holding tight, can you see it? Streaming the truth live from where they decree it. Sylvia speaks, no filter, no buffer. Courtroom drama couldn't get any tougher.
When the gavel's first bang, to the witness stands tears. Sylvia's lens captures all your hopes and fears. Uploading justice one trial at a time. Tuning every moment, edges sublime.
Welcome to the Sylvia Show, oh yeah. She's got the inside scoop, don't you care? With every verdict, the suspense does grow. So hit subscribe, let's start the show. Welcome to the Sylvia Show, oh yeah. She's got the inside scoop, don't you care? With every verdict, the suspense does grow. So hit subscribe, let's start the show. Faces tell stories, the courtroom can't hide. Sylvia's insights cut through the divide. From jury talks to the lawyer's secret. In Sylvia's world, you know you'll need it. Behind the scenes where whispers are loud, her lens reveals the truth in the crowd. Courtroom secrets laid bare to see. Stay curious with Sylvia Spree. Every objection, every sharp retort, Sylvia's there to give you the report. Exclusive footage no one else can snag. From catchy headlines straight to the tag. Welcome to the Sylvia Show, oh yeah. She's got the inside scoop, don't you care? With every verdict, the suspense does grow. So hit subscribe, let's start the show. Welcome to the Sylvia Show, oh yeah. She's got the inside scoop, don't you care? With every verdict, the suspense does grow. So hit subscribe, let's start the show.
Faces tell.
Hey guys, it's me, Sylvia. I came on to do the coverage from the trial today. All right, I'm gonna go ahead on and start. Let me add X in here. Hold on a second. All right, good people, here we go.
With regard to the motion that we heard yesterday, it would be helpful to me and to Ms. Anderson, who is helping me go through some of those cases, if each of you would submit, I don't think you need to be more than one page, just some bullet points on what your positions are. That would be helpful to her in going through the cases that she's going through, and I would appreciate you doing that. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Does the court have a deadline for that?
This afternoon, no. Next Wednesday?
Yes, sir. Understood.
Next Wednesday. How about that? Mr. Steele, got an email from you last night.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about it. Tell us about it.
And good morning, Your Honor. Good morning, everyone. I was at a local gym. It's called Planet Fitness.
Right.
And I was lifting weights, and a gentleman came in front of me. I don't know if he was there already, but he was in front of me. And he said something to the effect, I'm not quoting, we know each other. And I looked at him and I recognized him. I said, you're a juror. I can't speak with you. He said, understood. And then walked away. And I did not, after that, before I went anywhere in the gym, I looked and I did not see the gentleman.
All right, you obviously don't know a number or anything like
I
that.
don't know a number, but I believe he sits right here in the front row, I believe. But I definitely identify, and I could send an email if they come in and tell you exactly which seat he's in.
Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have them come in, ask them if there was a random encounter with any of the lawyers. I won't single you out. Assuming he says yes, then we will keep him for a question or two, and let the rest of the jury go out. But just question him about the encounter.
Understood.
Okay.
Of course.
That sound like a plan for everybody?
Yes, sir.
All right. I want the camera off while these juries are in here because I'm probably going to have to put one on the stand. So turn it off.
All right, he turned the camera off, and then we're going to go back on where he turned it back on. This is when he's questioning the juror.
Excuse me. All right. You see, he's still here, and his wounds are hidden. It was nothing at all for you to be concerned about. He can tell you about it if he wants to. But there's nothing to be concerned about at all. All right. Call your next witness.
Thank you, Judge. The state court calls Mark Spalding.
Mark Spalding. Come on down, please, sir, if you would. Raise your right hand. The evidence you give is sworn or affirmed to be the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Have a seat. Or speak loudly enough so that all members of the jury can hear you. Begin by introducing yourself and spelling your last name for me.
My name is Mark Spalding. Last name Spaulding.
Everybody here okay?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
How are you currently employed?
I am the court administrator for the Brunswick Judicial Circuit.
And who are the judges in the Brunswick Judicial Circuit?
That would be Judge Scarlett, Harrison, Kelly, Lane, and Guy.
Okay, and how long have you been doing that?
Approximately 3 years.
And briefly tell the jury a little bit about what you do as the court administrator.
Primarily, it's administrative duties for the judges, working with their budget, working with scheduling in all of our counties, making sure that when we schedule things that we have enough courtroom space in each county that day to handle where the judges are.
A lot of logistics, moving people around, things like that.
Yes.
Do you issue calendars for people to appear in court, things like that?
No, that's generally done through our clerk's offices, but I work with the clerk's offices and other agencies, tied to the court system to try to ensure that we have flow. Sometimes we have some overflow, and I've worked with state court and magistrate court downstairs to see if they had a courtroom available, that type of thing.
Prior to your employment as a court administrator, what did you do?
I worked with Judge Kelly in drug court. I was assigned there for approximately a year.
And prior to your work in drug court, what did you do?
I worked for the district attorney's office.
And which district attorney or district attorneys did you work for?
I worked for Ms. Johnson.
Did you work for the current district attorney at all?
No.
Okay. And did you work for the prior district attorney before Ms. Johnson?
No.
When did you begin with the Brunswick District Attorney's Office with Ms. Johnson?
I believe it was 2013. I think I worked approximately 8 years.
And what was your job when you first started?
I was the office manager or office administrator for the Brunswick office.
And is that the job that you maintained throughout your whole employment at the district attorney's office?
Yes.
And the term office manager is kind of one of those catch-all terms in a lot of different jobs in a lot of different places. Please tell the jury what it meant for you to be the office manager in the Brunswick Judicial Circuit District Attorney's Office.
Typically, it was working with administrative duties as cases came in, making sure they got assigned out, working with the support staff, working with, again, external agencies, making sure that we got our calendars or working with clerk's offices, making sure we knew the dates that we were available. We have, our trial weeks, but we also had fast track days, which would be pleas, motions, probation hearings, that type of thing, and working with the defense attorneys and public defenders and probation, just making sure those got scheduled.
And were you working with attorneys?
Well, I was working with them in terms of just making sure things were moving through the court system, moving through our office and making sure that we were, moving things along, moving the cases along.
Am I fair to say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, am I fair to say that you would work with them in sort of an administrative capacity?
Yes.
Right. What about investigators? Did you work with investigators at all?
Not directly, no.
Right. On occasion, maybe pass them in the hallway or something like that?
Well, if they were in the office that day or something, we'd see each other, yes.
Did you work with Jackie Johnson herself?
Yes.
How often?
Well, I would probably have interaction with her daily in some capacity, just catching her up on what I was working on or where we were with different things, making sure she knew maybe when hearings were, that type of thing.
Can you describe your relationship with her to the jury?
Yeah, well, I worked for her, so I was her employee, but we have known each other for a long time.
When you say a long time, was that prior to your employment?
Yes.
And why is that?
I was a probation officer for several years with the state, and I recall when she came to work in the circuit, she was an assistant district attorney at that time.
Okay. And did you all have a good relationship?
I believe so, yes.
And when you were working at the district attorney's office, is there oftentimes sort of a level of trust that you have to have between you and the boss?
Yes.
Sure. She would trust you to do your job, fair?
I believe so.
And you would trust her to do hers?
Yes.
All right. Now, as part of your job, did you sometimes make phone calls on behalf of the district attorney?
I don't know that I would do it on behalf of the district attorney, other than I worked at the district attorney's office, so I had reason to call people.
Sure. But I'm not talking about, can you call and make reservations for me at a restaurant? But sometimes maybe, hey, Mr. Spalding, can you please call so-and-so and find out about this calendar, about this case, something like that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you know Greg McMichael?
I did.
And what was Greg McMichael's job in the district attorney's office?
He was an investigator.
Okay. And I think earlier you talked about that you didn't work with them much. Did you work with Mr. McMichael much?
Not directly.
Okay. How well did you know him?
I knew Greg, again, years earlier. I believe he had worked at the Glenn County Police Department at some point in time. And so through probation, I knew who he was, and then, worked with him in the DA's office.
Were you all close? Were you not close? How would you describe it?
We weren't close. We didn't do anything socially together. I knew him from work.
And did you know a person named John Johnson?
Yes.
Who is John Johnson?
At the time, John was the chief assistant district attorney.
Okay. When you say the term chief assistant district attorney, tell the jury what that is, please.
Well, typically it's the attorney right under the district attorney who runs the office and, say runs the office, but he's that person would be the chief under the DA and have the most, I guess, authority besides the DA.
Would I be fair to describe that as maybe kind of the second in command?
I believe that would be it.
All right. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please describe your relationship with John Johnson.
Had a good relationship again. He was in the district attorney's office when I was first getting into probation work, so I knew him for several years.
Okay. Now, I know you've been gone from the district attorney's office for a couple of years now. I want to take you back to February of 2020. Back at that point, where were you employed?
February of 2020, I was with the district attorney's office.
Okay. And at that point, to your recollection, were you still in the same employment position, office administrator or office manager?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall whether you received a phone call from Greg McMichael at some point shortly after a shooting of Ahmaud Arbery?
I do not.
Okay. Do you recall whether Greg McMichael left you a voicemail?
I believe there was a voice message that he left when the GBI began investigating the case, that I was interviewed by one of their agents. I can't remember who it was, and let them know about the voicemail.
Okay. Without telling us exactly what it says, do you remember generally what the voicemail was about?
I do not.
All right. Do you recall after the voicemail was left whether you called Jackie Johnson?
I probably called her at some point during that time, yes.
Okay. And do you recall whether that call was after work hours?
I don't recall directly. I mean, a lot of the calls I had with her over the years were probably after work hours.
Okay. Do you recall whether the next morning, whether you called Greg back?
I do not. So I don't have a recollection of talking to Mr. McMichael.
Okay. And do you remember whether you spoke to him for nearly 30 minutes on the phone?
I don't.
Okay. Do you remember after speaking to Mr. McMichael on the phone for 30 minutes that you then called Jackie back?
I don't have a knowledge of talking to Mr. McMichael. And as far as talking to Ms. Johnson, that happened with great regularity. So,
now, you previously testified under oath in this case. Is that correct?
yes, sir.
In fact, you testified twice under oath in this case.
Yes, sir.
Previous hearing,
Yes,
you say? And give or take, was that approximately a year to a year and a half after the shooting?
That sounds about right.
And when you've previously testified under oath, being a year to a year and a half out after the shooting, were you able to recall them then?
No.
Okay. Now, you're familiar with the grand jury process somewhat. Is that fair?
I'm familiar with somewhat, yes.
And when you previously testified, you testified in front of the grand jury, did you not?
You're talking about my previous testimony that we've just... Yes, sir. It was in front of a grand jury.
All right. Now, and you testified and you said that you testified twice. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Were they on different days?
Yes, sir.
And are you aware as to whether grand jury is open to the public?
Well, I'm aware that it's a closed proceeding, I suppose.
On what basis?
Yeah, may we approach?
Yeah. May I re-ask the question, Your Honor? Thank you. Are you aware as to whether the grand jury is open to the public?
I don't believe it is, but my interaction with the grand jury was not one of a legal nature.
All right. So in the 2 times that you testified in front of the grand jury, did you testify on different days?
Yes.
Okay. After the first time that you testified in front of the grand jury, who was your first phone call when you left the grand jury?
I'm gonna object to relevance.
Overruled.
I don't recall who my first phone call was to.
Okay. Did you call Jackie Johnson shortly after you left the grand jury?
I know I talked to after I testified.
Okay. Was she your first phone call?
I don't recall.
Was she your second phone call?
I don't recall.
Was it the same day?
I believe it was.
Would you agree with me that it may be within an hour of leaving the grand jury?
I know this is in the record of the first grand jury testimony. If you could give me just a second to maybe take a look at these notes.
Certainly take a look at that. And well, let me ask you a couple questions before you do that. In your hand, do you have a copy of some of your grand jury testimony?
Yes, sir.
And would it help refresh your recollection if you were able to take a look at your grand jury testimony? Would it help your memory if you looked at your grand jury testimony? All right, take a look at it and read it until your memory is refreshed. And when you're finished, please look up at me.
Okay, sir.
Did that refresh your recollection?
Well, it refreshes my recollection to the degree that, yes, we did talk about that in that testimony that I had talked to her after my testimony.
Okay, and did you discuss your testimony with Jackie Johnson?
Well, according to, yes, I did talk to her and sort of vented that I had been, talked to the grand jury, and I was concerned, really sort of aggravated, I guess, that there was an inference that I was lying.
Okay, all right. So a couple of weeks after the shooting of Ahmaud Arbery, were you involved in a meeting with Jackie Johnson, John Johnson, and Rocky Bridges?
I don't recall being in the meeting. I recall being, I believe, called into, they were preparing a press release, and some of the duties that I'd performed for the office was sort of being an English nerd. I can, try to clean up some language or check it for grammatical stuff like that. So I believe that's what I was called in for.
Do you remember the topic of the conversation in that meeting?
I don't, not without seeing the press release that came from it.
Do you recall being in a meeting with Jackie Johnson, John Johnson, and Liberty Stewart that same day?
Not separately. I believe that I was called in after those meetings.
And do you recall whether there was a topic of conversation in that meeting?
I don't.
Do you recall whether that was on Saturday?
I do not.
Okay. May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yeah. You need some water then? You okay? Okay. I think you know by now, if any of you need water or anything, I think there's some nets back there. Just let the bailiff know, okay?
Your Honor, I have nothing further for this witness.
Examination.
Good morning, Mr. Spalding.
Good morning.
I'm just gonna ask you a few questions. Part of your duties was organizing meetings for Ms. Johnson, correct?
If asked, yes.
And part of your duties was also making sure there were court, where all the DAs would go to what courtroom through the circuit, correct?
Not through the circuit so much as the Brunswick office. I would help in other offices from time to time, but my duties were in the Brunswick office primarily.
Were you the buffer? When I say the buffer, before you can get to Ms. Johnson, did people have to come to you?
Not necessarily.
Okay, great. Do you know a Gary Cook?
Good.
A Gary Cook.
I do.
Okay. How do you know Gary Cook?
Well, Gary was someone that I was familiar with in my probation days as well. He would advocate for people. So I got to know him then. If there was an issue with someone on probation that he knew, I think that continued. Gary is, like I say, an advocate for people. So whoever he felt like he needed to, whichever office, whether it be probation or the DA's office or anybody else, I suppose he would try to help them out.
So was he somewhat like a community leader?
I would say he was a community leader in his area, yes.
Okay. Was there a time after the shooting of Mr. Arbery that Mr. Cook contacted you in reference to coordinating a meeting with Ms. Johnson?
Not that I recall. I remember being in a meeting with Mr. Cook, but he did not call me to set up the meeting.
Okay. In that meeting, was there a Marcus Arbery?
Yes.
And a Gary Arbery?
I don't recall.
Do you recall, isn't it true, that was the meeting around March 4th, if you don't remember the exact date?
I would not know the dates.
But does that sound about right?
I couldn't say.
Okay, but it was after the shooting, February 23rd shooting.
It was after the shooting, yes.
Do you recall, isn't it true, Ms. Johnson attended that meeting?
She was in attendance, yes.
Not telling us what happened or what people said in that meeting. Was she informed? Was she given information, legal process, procedure information to the family? Or do you not know? Want me to
Could you
rephrase it?
Yes.
Yes. During that meeting, isn't it true, Ms. Johnson was giving the family the legal process of what happens in?
My memory of that meeting was that was what the family had asked for was information on how things proceeded.
Okay, did she answer those questions without saying how she answered?
I believe so.
Okay. Did everyone seem like they were satisfied based on what you observed at that time?
I don't know I wouldn't know if they were satisfied when the meeting ended.
Okay, but it ended on a good note.
As far as I could tell.
Okay. Do you recall what was going on in the community at that time? Was there a lot of unrest?
There was a lot of activity in the community at that time, yes. And
did you help with organizing press release?
Not so much organizing the press release, but when asked, I would help look at them and sort of look at the wording and offer opinions as to how we do it. I mean, it all came from our lawyers, but just to kind of make it more understandable to the general public and make sure it flowed.
Why were you all doing all this here back then? What was the purpose?
Well, there was a lot of activity in the community, and the biggest thing I remember is we were trying to get a message out that we weren't involved in the case.
So you're always trying to inform the people, the community, as best as you can.
I suppose.
But you all didn't have any evidence as it relates to the investigation of the Aubrey case, did you?
I would not have been
Part of
privy
it.
to that, no.
Okay. Do you recall another meeting, the first meeting, isn't it true, it happened up in the DA office with Gary Cook, Mr. Aubrey, Marcus Aubrey?
The meeting I remember happened in the jury assembly room.
You're talking about the second meeting. Okay, let's talk about that. Okay.
That was the only meeting I was involved with Mr. Cook or Mr. Aubrey.
Okay. And in the second meeting, do you recall? So that's the meeting you recall that she gave out information, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about you and Miss Johnson relationship a little bit. I'm gonna touch on some things that Mr. Fowler went over with you. You said it was not unusual for you to talk with her after hours, correct?
No, it wasn't.
Because that was part of your administrative duties, correct?
Well, I worked for her, and I came up in an era where job descriptions gave you what you did, and the last part of that was always other duties as assigned, which meant that you may have to work nights, weekends, that type of thing. So it wasn't unusual.
Did any of Miss Johnson's emails come through you?
Her emails going into the office?
Yes.
No.
Okay, so that was not part of your duties?
No.
The duties that you have now being the administrator for the judges, is that similar to what you've done for Mrs. Johnson's office?
To some degree, there's some similarities in both.
Do you recall a time when there was some internet posting that caused, not going into what the posting were, that caused a little stir in the office and the community?
Not anything specific. I mean, there were a lot of social media posts during that time, a lot of commentary. So I don't recall anything specific.
Did you recall, do you recall there was a time that you and Ms. Johnson was getting ready to meet with the Honorable Judge Scarlett to go over calendar?
That happened in the course of just regular business, not just during that time. So I don't recall a specific meeting.
Do you recall Ms. Johnson receiving a call in reference to threats?
I do not.
Yeah. Do you recall that Ms. Johnson and you all meeting with the NAACP and Reverend, I'm gonna see what his name was. He's one of the reverends, the ex-mayor in this community.
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall, was that in relation to what was going on in the community as it relates to the unrest?
My recollection of that meeting is that it was very similar to the one that happened with the family. It was a meeting for information on how things proceeded through the court system.
Okay. Throughout this time of unrest, back in after the killing of Aubrey, up until May 5th, isn't it true Ms. Johnson was doing her best to get information out to the community?
Objection, speculation.
I'll sustain the objection to the question as phrased.
I'll rephrase it. During this time, what was Ms. Johnson's actions as it relates to the community with the information?
Well, I mean, during that time, I know that we, were putting out some press releases. I can't tell you now how many we did or the frequency of them, but we were releasing things to the extent that trying to make the point that we weren't involved with the case.
And that was a little unusual for the office, correct?
Well, it was an unusual time, yes. So, I mean, we generally didn't have to do that many press releases.
Okay. Let me confer with co-counsel. That's all the questions.
Anything ready to write?
Yes, thank you. You talked about the meeting with Mr. Marcus. Do you remember if Wanda Cooper Jones was in that meeting?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Do you know who that is?
I know that she is Ahmad's mother and Mr. Arbery's ex-wife.
Okay. Now, you talked about some of the press releases, those sorts of things, communication to the public, meetings, all those sorts of things. Was the purpose of those sorts of things, if you will, to answer some of the public's questions after questions were raised?
I think the purpose was just to get the message out that we weren't involved in the case.
Well, let me ask it this way. Why would you need to get a message out if people weren't asking questions about it?
Well, for my involvement in it, I wouldn't have been the one to make the decision of getting the message out. I would have helped with the message in terms of the language and trying to get it to a point where it was understandable. But the decision to put the message out, I couldn't speak to.
Okay. Well, I guess, I think council called it unrest. Was there some unrest going on at this time?
There were a lot of things happening in the community, as I recall.
Would you describe them as unrest?
There were, I think, a few events that would probably rise to that level.
Okay. And were they about the Ahmaud Arbery case?
Yes.
Okay. And was that about the same time that you were putting out the messages?
In that same period, yes. Over that several month period, I would think so, yes.
One moment, Your Honor. That's all I have, Judge.
Ray Cross,
No further questions.
can we excuse the witness?
You may be excused.
You're excused. Thank you. Call you next witness.
Thank you.
George F. Barnhill, you have to use the middle initial, please. Thank you.
All right, raise your right hand, please. The evidence you'll give is sworn or affirmed to be the truth, so help you God.
So help.
Have a seat. Speak loudly enough, of course, so the jury can hear you. Introduce yourself to them and spell your last name.
My name is George Franklin Barnhill. Last name Barnhill.
Everybody hear him okay?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Now, I'm just going to go ahead and start off with this. Are you the former district attorney of the Waycross Judicial Circuit?
I am not.
Okay. Who is?
That would be my father, George E. Barnhill.
All right. Now, you said you are George F. Barnhill.
That is correct.
Your father is George E. Barnhill.
Correct. And his father was George D. Barnhill. And my son is George G. Barnhill.
Is there an A, B, and a C?
In other branches of family, yes.
All right.
You realize after 26 cycles, you're gonna run out of letters.
I'll let that generation figure it out, Judge.
How are you employed, sir?
I'm a private attorney here in Brunswick.
Okay. And when you say private attorney, do you do civil work, criminal work, kind of combination?
I do a little bit of everything, criminal, civil, and I'm actually my firm contracts with the county government for juvenile prosecution.
All right. And are you a lawyer in good standing with the Georgia Bar?
I am.
How long have you been a lawyer?
I was sworn in 2013, so going on 12 years now.
How long have you been in private practice?
Approximately 4 years and change.
And prior to 4 years and change, what were you doing?
I was employed as an assistant district attorney in the Brunswick Judicial Circuit.
And do we call it about 8.5, 9 years, somewhere in there?
Approximately 8, almost 9 years.
Now, you talked about the Brunswick Judicial Circuit. Were you assigned to any particular county?
I started in Camden County, got moved back to Glenn County, was here primarily, but would float either with juvenile work or drug court work to other counties in the circuit. And then I also would take conflict cases in other places as well.
And so at the time, were you what we call an assistant district attorney?
Yes.
Did you get your job in Glenn County fresh out of law school?
I did. I actually started right out of law school.
And I think you just kind of described what you did. Was the district attorney who hired you, was that Jack Johnson?
It was.
And did you work during your entire employment in Glenn County?
Yes.
I'm sorry, you already said, when did you leave the district attorney's office?
In December of 2020. Yes, 2020.
And when you left, were you generally doing the same duties as when you started?
Yes.
Now, describe for me, if you will, your relationship with Jackie Johnson.
Employee, employer, I'd grown up, I knew her because she had, I believe, had worked for my dad and the former district attorney when she had gotten out of law school, so I knew of her. It was friendly. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, just good rapport, but we were not friends. She never came to my house. I never went to her house. She was a good boss.
One of those things where it's employer, employee, but at the same time, sometimes how's your family, all that sort of thing. Okay, all right. And I'm not trying to get too personal. How's your relationship with your dad?
It has its ups and downs, as any relationship with a parent does, but he's still my dad, still love him to death.
All right. And how old are you, sir?
37? Doing quick math in my head.
It's okay. You weren't prepped for that question.
No.
All right. So when you were in the district attorney's office, did you sometimes talk to your dad?
Yes.
And would you ever talk about work?
Often.
And would you and did you ever see your dad interact with Jackie Johnson?
At summer conferences, I never remember him coming to our office either in Camden or in Glenn. I don't remember him ever being present in the office, but if he were in town, I think we went to lunch one time when I just started. He drove over and had lunch because he was working on a conflict case here in Brunswick, and Jackie just happened to be here and we went and made lunch.
Did it appear to be a good relationship?
Yes.
All right. You referenced something we've not heard of in this courtroom. It's called summer conference. What is that?
So the prosecuting attorneys council, which is the not really governing body, but it's sort of the association of all the DAs and solicitors in the state of Georgia. They host continuing education classes for prosecutors throughout the state. We have what's called winter conference and summer conference. Ideally, winter and in the summer conference, they hold it every year on Jekyll Island. The winter conference, they hold it up either in Athens, Atlanta, or Stone Mountain. And so if you've got to get credits for your continuing education, you go to one of those two conferences because you can get all your hours in a 3 to 4 day period. And you see ADAs and solicitors from all over the state.
Good way to network.
Yeah, and catch up with people. I mean, I've got people that I went to law school with that work in like Coweta and Clayton, and you do basic DA training and stuff. So you run into people that you knew from up around Atlanta and then run into people that, were in like the Waycross Circuit or the Atlantic Circuit.
Would you describe prosecution as somewhat of a small community? Or a close community, maybe?
Close, yes. I mean, I wouldn't say, I don't know every ADA or DA in the state, but at least around here in South Georgia, it's by necessity, a lot of people that are working in different circuits.
Okay. When you go to summer conference, do you sometimes see people from other offices?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Now, do you recall the time around the Ahmaud Arbery shooting?
I do.
And at some point, the day of the shooting, February 23rd of 2020, did you receive a phone call about it at some point?
Yes.
Who called?
We had heard, and my wife and I were with our kids, and we had heard, and it was on Facebook about there being, I can't remember if it was like on the crime blotter or something about there being a shooting in Satilla Shores. We have friends that live in Satilla Shores. They had like a group text. I can't remember how, but we knew that McMichael Greg was involved. I didn't know in what capacity. I get a phone call from Jackie that evening saying, I'm trying to get a hold of your dad. I need someone to come talk to Glenn County Police. We can't touch this.
All right, now, you mentioned Greg McMichael.
Yes.
Describe your relationship with Greg McMichael.
Co-workers. I mean, his office was down the hall. I would see him every once in a while. He was in and out a bunch. I mean, I cannot recall a single time that I ever went and sat in his office or he came and sat in my office and we did anything but talk about work. So, I mean, friendly, cordial. I never went to his house. He never came to my house. I cannot remember a single time eating lunch with him that was not like a Christmas party or an office involved lunch.
So did you ever work a case with him in the DA's office or anything like that?
Did he? Yes. Did he do stuff? Yes, but I wouldn't call that working with. He wasn't a primary investigator on any case that I handled.
Maybe service.
Pick up witnesses, run down reports, that sort of thing.
Did you ever have to rely on him to do major things in the office?
No, I did not.
Why not?
Well, I was not high enough on the totem pole. I'm, an ADA. I wasn't major crimes. I was handling juvenile cases, drug court, theft crimes. There were other ADAs higher up than I was that could direct people. I could even direct staff. I was just doing work.
So you received this call from Jack?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately what time it was?
It was early evening. It was getting dark. I'd say around 5 or 6.
At that time around February?
Yeah.
And you said you were with your family. Were you out at a restaurant, home, out in the yard?
I think we were driving back from, I can't remember, but we were out either coming to or from Barnhill County.
Did you call your dad?
I attempted to call him, and it went straight to voicemail, which told me he probably had his phone off.
And did you leave him a voicemail?
Left him a voicemail, but I turned around and I knew my mom would be by, and she never leaves her phone off, so I called her.
Okay. Did your mom answer? She did. All right. Did you say where's dad?
I said, yes. I said, hey, because I knew they were probably out at the farm. I said, hey, where's dad at? Jackie needs to get a hold of him about a case. And she said, and I said, it's urgent, just have him call. And that was the extent of the conversation.
How did you know it was urgent?
Because Jackie had told me that Glenn County needed to talk to somebody, wanted to talk to somebody, and that they needed to talk to an ADA or a DA, and that they were wanting that to happen as soon as possible.
Did you ever get a call back from your dad or your mom?
I got a call. I can't remember if I got a call back from my dad that evening or the following morning. He was letting me know that he and Michelle McIntyre, which was one of his senior ADAs, were going to be coming over Monday to meet with GCPD, And he wanted to know if I had court and if I wanted to grab lunch later, because I hadn't seen him, and I talked to him, but I hadn't seen him probably in a week or two.
Did you have any more phone calls with anybody about the case after that?
About the case, no.
Later on down the road, did you have a phone call with your dad about your dad conflicting on the case?
I mean, yes. We had a phone call about, and this would have been after stuff was being posted on the internet and everything, and he said that he was going to be filing to get off the case, and he just wanted to give me a heads up.
Were you appreciative of the heads up?
Yes.
What did you do with that information?
I told my wife, and I can't remember if I told anybody in the office or not, because I think it was around that time that the letter that he had sent to the GCPD was published.
After you got a phone with your dad about that, did you call Jackie?
I can't remember if I called or texted.
Do you remember what your relation?
I think the full extent was my dad's told me that he's getting off the case.
Right. Was that what you were informing her?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I have a moment?
Yes.
Thank you. Just want to kind of clarify something. You said that a moment ago that you received a call from Jackie saying that she needed your dad to talk to the police. Talk to the police about what?
About the shooting. If I remember correctly, she said there's been a shooting in Satilla Shores. Greg McMichael's involved, and I said, well, I've heard about it. It's already on like a couple of blotters. And she said, I can't remember verbatim, but it's, we can't touch this. We can't touch, and we referring to the Brunswick DA's office. We can't touch this. The police want to talk to somebody. Can you get a hold of your dad and see if he can come over and talk to him?
Now, when you say that you come talk to them, based upon your experience, what are you talking to them about?
In my experience, it's law enforcement wants to run facts and scenarios by to see if they've got enough probable cause, or if they need to talk through certain aspects of the case to see what needs to be done, if anything.
Your Honor. Yeah. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
I will. Good afternoon, Mr. Barnhill.
Good afternoon or morning.
Morning, sorry. Been a long day already. So I think based on your direct examination, I think we kind of have a sense of some of the timeline and what occurred. However, I think there's also a lot of stuff that we have not discussed that I think is very important for our timeline. Okay. Do you recall, because a lot of this incidents.
Can we move on to questions, please? I don't mean to object, but can we start with questions, please, instead of sentences and statements?
He's on cross. I'm establishing my timeline.
I understand, but establish your timeline by question, okay?
All right. Do you recall kind of the first event publicly that started, where this case started impacting you personally?
It would have been, I believe, in the first part of April. Brunswick News had published an article, which then led to people starting to post things online through Facebook and a couple other websites.
Okay. Did you recall that date being April 2nd?
Yes.
Now, after the April 2nd article, there was a specific Facebook post that caused concern. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
All right. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? For the record, I'm going to show the witness what's been marked as defense exhibit 5A. Can you identify that document?
I can.
Is it accurate as to what you remember it to be when you first saw it?
It is.
Are there any material additions, edits, or deletions that you recognize?
There are not.
Your Honor, at this time I move for admission of exhibit 5A.
Any objection?
I haven't gotten to see it yet.
I don't know what it is.
Sorry,
It's okay. Good copy.
yeah,
Or I can just get it from Mr. Barnhill.
yeah. Sorry, I should have showed it before I walked over there. Mr. Barnhill, I have that. I forgot. So, Mr. Fowler.
Thank you. Did you tender it?
Any objection?
I was about to say, didn't remember if you tender. I don't have an objection. No.
Mr. Kumo, could you please, may I use monitor, Your Honor? Could you please publish 5A on the monitor?
I've been assuming you all can see. Everybody see okay? Pardon? It's kind of small?
Yeah, just know that that's much better.
Oh, okay.
Could you explain to the jury kind of why that article was relevant to you and how that impacted you and your actions?
There was a Facebook group, the Justice League United. One of the gentlemen that runs that page started posting things. This is one of them, talking about the case and putting Jackie and then Barnhill, George Barnhill, which is me, but I believe they were referring to my father, but referring to George Barnhill as the Grand Wizard of the KKK, and that action needed to happen, and people needed to force action because we were the case was taking too long.
Did you begin receiving threats at that time?
I did.
Did you contact Ms. Johnson at that time?
I did. After this one was posted, I contacted Jackie because and you can't really see it on this one, but this was the main post. People were posting things up under it, and someone had posted my home address, and then people were posting things like "son for a son," and we need to go demonstrate and march at their houses and march at their homes. And I had 2 kids under the age of 4 and my wife. And so I called Jackie and I said, this is what's going on. This is what people are posting about. What do I need to do? Do I need to call the police? And Jackie said, let me see if I can call somebody and we'll go from there.
And as a result of that call, you were given some enhanced police security?
Yes, the sheriff's office brought people said they start patrolling our neighborhood. A couple of law enforcement officers I knew who lived in my neighborhood at the time said that they would drive by more frequently. And then GCPD put up a poll camera outside of my house.
All right. And we're not sure of the exact date of the poll camera, but it was sometime early to mid-April, correct?
Correct.
All right. And then there was another post that caused some concern just a few days later. Is that correct?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor? I'm going to hand the witness what's been marked as defense exhibit 5B.
Have you shown that to,
Yes.
Can you identify that exhibit?
I can.
Is it accurate to what you remember it to be when you first saw it?
It is.
Are there any material additions, edits, or deletions that you recognize?
There is not.
Your Honor, at this time I move for the admission of exhibit 5B into evidence.
No objection.
Proceed. Mr. Kakuma, please. If you would explain this post in as much as its effect on you, how it was significant to you, and what actions you may have taken or caused others to take.
So this was the same group, and they had posted the wanted poster for Greg and Travis and said that they were going to be, because law enforcement was not doing anything, that they were going to be conducting a citizen's arrest on Travis and Greg and any involved parties, and that any force required would be allowed. And they posted Jackie's photo, once again referring to her as, you know, on her back and knees, referring to me as the son. And it's cut off here, but there was my dad's photo was next to it, and he was referred to again as the Grand Wizard. It's at that point, I was concerned that someone would take this as getting scary. What do I need to do?
And you had some prior experience or knowledge of Bobby Worthy and his group?
I had, he had posted things previously about, not to this extent, but posted things about government corruption, politicians being corrupted. He considers himself an activist, and, you know, protesting on behalf of people, whether they want him to or not.
But isn't it fair to say it's not just protests, it's threats of violence?
Well, he is, as he considers himself to be, a member of the Black Panther Party, or the New Age Black Panther Party, and he promotes on his pages black militias, militias that will take it to the streets.
Some type of paramilitary organization.
Correct.
All right. And so when you saw that post, you alerted Miss Johnson?
I did, and I sent my wife and kids to go stay with her parents in Brantley County.
Now, there was another post on April 17th. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Handing the witness what you marked as 5C. Now, this post, can you identify that exhibit?
Yes, it's a text message that I sent to Jackie Johnson on April 17th of 2020.
Okay. Is it accurate what you remember it to be when you first saw it?
It is.
Are there any material additions, edits, or deletions that you recognize?
There is not.
I'm going to move for admission of Defense Exhibit 5C, Your Honor.
No objection.
Mr. Kakuma. Please explain, this was a text message you sent to Ms. Johnson on April 17th, 2020.
Correct.
What was the significance of this? Why did you send that text message?
Because there had been previous messages. This was off, it was being shared on several other groups online. They had been the same sort of message where people have been calling our office, inundating the phones, calling up and harassing staff. And I just thought that, and I had texted this to Jackie to let her know that we probably needed to call Tom's office to let him know that they need to get prepared because they're going to start getting all these same phone calls that we've been getting and my dad's office had been getting all throughout this.
Well, and let's not gloss over what you wanted to warn Mr. Durden of. Is it fair to say there was a lot of angry calls?
I would say majority were angry calls.
A lot of calls containing obscenities.
It got so bad at one point that we had to take some of the younger staff off of answering phones because we had college students and young professionals that were getting cussed at, called the most vile, horrible things, that we were all racist, that we were all going to burn in hell. And it didn't matter if we told these folks that we didn't know anything about the case, that we weren't assigned to the case, we didn't know anything about the case. No one wanted to hear that. And we had some of the younger ladies would answer the phone and get so upset they were crying. So me and Mark ended up running shifts on the phones because you call me a lot of things. I don't care.
Now, you say you and Mark, would that be Mark Spalding?
Yes.
And I probably need to explain to the jury, who is Tom Durden that we're talking about in this?
He was the former district attorney for the Atlantic Judicial Circuit, which is who the AG's office sent the case to after my dad filed for the recusal of his office. Sadly, he passed away a few years ago.
Now, your next major, there may have been other contacts, but your next major significant contact with Miss Johnson would have been April 26, 2020?
Correct.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yeah.
At this time, I'm handing the witness what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 5D. Can you identify that exhibit?
I can. It's a follow-up text I sent to Jackie about a week later on the 26th.
Is it accurate to what you remember it to be when you first saw it or sent it?
It is.
Are there any material additions, edits, or deletions that you recognize?
There are not.
Your Honor, at this time I move for admission of Exhibit 5D.
5D is moved for admission. Any objection?
No.
Receive.
If you would, Mr. Barnhill, explain to the jury the significance of this message and why you were alerting Ms. Johnson to it.
So the New York Times had published the article. It was being shared on numerous groups. The New York Times article, once again, saying that the Brunswick office and the Waycross office were involved, even though we were no longer involved at that point. As you can see, Jackie asked, how bad is it? I was just remarking that there was a couple of Facebook groups, one of which was a local group that was sharing pretty much everything that was being shared. And like I said, it was just talking about engagement. It had gone from like 1,500 people to over 5,000 people in 2 days. So it was catching.
And around this time, the threats really ramped up, correct?
Correct.
There were specific death threats.
Correct.
I believe the GBI investigation had to be opened up.
There was. I did not realize that you could call somebody on Facebook Messenger even if you weren't a friend of theirs. And so I had to turn off all that because people were calling me through Facebook Messenger and leaving voicemail threats to me and my wife.
Isn't it true that at some point someone took a picture of your children and published it?
Yes, so we had taken a picture. It was me, my dad, it was members of my family. And they had taken, I think it was Easter. And so it was all of us together as a family. And they had taken that photo and superimposed KKK hoods over all of us, including my kids.
So the fact that your father was drawing this attention and going to be recusing from the case was something he would tell you.
Yes.
Because it was endangering your safety.
And he was getting threats through his office, and that was the substance of our conversation. He's like, yeah, we're getting off of this. This is crazy. It's not worth this. And he said, I'm getting off this case.
All right, and then the next significant event would have been approximately May 1st.
Yes.
May I approach a witness, Your Honor? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Going to give you the witness what's been marked as defense exhibit 5. Can you identify that exhibit?
I can.
Is it accurate to what you remember it to be when you first saw it?
It is.
Are there any material additions, edits, or deletions that you recognize?
There or not.
Your Honor, at this time, I'm going to move for the admission of exhibit 5E.
5E is moved to, yeah, the objection.
No, Your Honor.
Could you explain to the jury the impact that that post had on you and what sort of response or actions you took based on your viewing of it?
It was, once again, now the same group was posting and was called and had tagged all these different organizations, NAACP, the Black Lawyers for Justice, a couple of different organizations, and had drawn up what they considered to be their own. Basically, they were saying that if Tom Durden didn't take it to grand jury or have the McMichaels arrested within 7 days, that they were going to take any steps necessary to put them into custody.
And any time there's a post like this, isn't it true that there's always other threats that come along with it?
And people posted up under this that that my father needed to be arrested, that Jackie needed to be arrested, that I needed to be arrested because we were all part of the problem.
And when they say be arrested, what they were talking about was a citizen's arrest where they intended to take the law into their own hands. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
The next day after that, you saw something else that concerned you that caused you to reach out to Miss Johnson.
That's correct.
May I approach a witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Attender, this time to the witness, what's been marked as defense exhibit 5F. Can you identify that document?
I can.
Is it accurate as to what you remember it to be when you first saw it?
It is.
Are there any material additions, edits, or deletions that you recognize?
They're not.
Your Honor, at this time I moved to admit exhibit 5F.
Any objection? No, Your Honor. Let's see.
Mr. Kakumo, please. Please describe this text message. You can read it, but explain the significance of it.
So Bobby Worthy's Justice League, it had gained more people following it, but he had relatively small reach. It was localized. May 2nd, the Georgia NAACP and a couple of other organizations took the post, which was the citizen's arrest and all of its accompanying statements, and shared it on their pages as well. So they were endorsing Mr. Worthy's proposed actions for civilian arrest against everybody involved. And as you can, if you look down the bottom part, James Woodall was the president of the Georgia NAACP at the time, and he wrote, "This is beautiful," and put the two fists up in the air.
And that was concerning because he had a large social media following.
Over 500,000 for the Georgia Dublin NAACP at this point because of everything that was gaining.
And I'll note on that message, you're talking about these threats and specific threats, and you suggest to Ms. Johnson that you probably need to let the McMichaels know or let law enforcement know that there might be dangerous incidents about to occur.
Yes.
All right, and then there was a final, at least as to what we're discussing now, on May 3rd that caused you concern.
Correct.
Now I approach a witness, Your Honor. I'm giving to the witness what's been marked as Exhibit 5G. Can you identify that exhibit?
I can.
Is it accurate to what you remember it to be when you first saw it?
It is.
Are there any material additions, edits, or deletions that you recognize?
There is not.
Your Honor, at this time I'm going to move for the admission of Exhibit 5G.
Any objection?
There you are.
Proceed.
Mr. Pacino, please. If you would please kind of describe exactly what that post contains and how it was concerning to you and the responses that you might have taken or received as a result of that post.
So this, somehow Mr. Worthy had gotten a hold of a letter that was provided by my dad to the Glenn County Police Department, which was his initial letter about the ongoing investigation, his initial findings, and his status with the case. Mr. Worthy posted it in its entirety and then posted my photo with Jackie's again, saying that we're the two unindicted felons and that people need to take action to see that justice was going to get done for everybody involved. And laid out that this is why we need to vote George Barnhill, not George E., but just George Barnhill out of office. And then people filling it up under it saying George Barnhill needs to be arrested. We need to find George Barnhill. He needs to feel this pain. And
they got your picture there.
And they got my picture.
This is a scary time for you and your family.
Yes.
If I could have one moment, Your Honor.
Amen.
Do you recall the date that the video was released to the press?
I believe it was May 5th.
May 5th. So everything we talked about was before the video ever even being released.
Correct.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Anything on redirect?
Yes, sir.
This was a scary time, wasn't it?
Very.
Is it fair to say that just about everybody would think that's a scary time for you?
I would hope so.
And for Tom Durden, did you know Tom Durden?
Yes. And I knew a bunch of people that worked in his office.
Tom Durden was a good man, wasn't he?
He was.
And scary time for Tom and people in his office.
Yes.
Those sorts of threats are serious, are they not?
They are.
And there's threats that you take seriously.
There are.
All right. I'm sure you have everybody's sympathy. Some of those threats, can they be construed as a crime?
We reported it to law enforcement and the GBI. I don't know what they did with it because it's their job to make arrests, not mine.
Right. Now, And are you familiar with, and I'm sure you're familiar with the idea of a terroristic threat.
Correct.
Could some of these potentially be construed as a terroristic threat?
I would consider them terrorist threats.
And as the receiver or the target of those threats, would that make you the victim?
Yes.
And if you're the victim of a crime like this, where would you say it's a scary time,
Yes.
potentially a confusing time?
Yes.
And are you looking for answers as the victim to the crime potentially?
Yes, from law enforcement.
Anybody involved in law enforcement? Fair?
Sure.
Now, what were the exhibits?
Which the witness.
Thanks. Show you 5A. I know it's hard to read, but where in there was it Wanda Cooper Jones who posted that?
Never said she did.
Okay, that's just all I'm asking. I'm not saying that you did. I'm just asking you. Did she post that?
No.
Okay. I'm going to show you Stacey's. I'm sorry, that's exhibit 5B. This is the next threat. Is it not?
Yes.
Did Wanda Cooper Jones post that?
I don't, and to save trouble, she never sent or posted any of the other exhibits. I never said she did.
Okay, let's take a look at the that's exhibit 5C. Did she post that?
She did not.
5B? Did she post that?
She did not.
Take a look at it.
I'm going to object, Your Honor, asked and answered. Mr. Barnhill's already stated 2 or 3 times that Ms. Cooper does
Well,
not.
let's do it
Certainly.
on this exhibit by exhibit basis, which is fine. Although he's already testified, she posted none of them.
I just wanted to go through.
Go ahead.
Just be sure. 5B, did she post that?
She did not.
5F, did she post that?
She did not.
Or 5G? Did she post that?
She did not.
Now, you previously testified, what is the date on the first threat?
April 3rd.
Okay, April 3rd. Do you remember the date of the shooting, sir?
23rd February.
And do you remember the day that your dad said he was going to take a look at the case?
24th.
About how many weeks is that in between the two? Give or take.
4. 4.
Okay, all right. And again, Mr. Barnhill, I'm sorry about all the threats. Darren, that's all I have.
Henry Cross.
No, Your Honor.
Will you excuse the witness?
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right,
Judge, what do I need to do with the exhibits?
leave them, well, give them to the bailiff and he'll give them to the appropriate person. If you would stay where you are, you've been seated about an hour and 15 minutes, so I think you probably need a break. We'll take our morning break. Don't discuss the case among yourselves and listen to the information. I will take about 20 minutes.
All right, Your
The jury's left. Can we excuse the witness?
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. You excuse 20 minutes.
So I can't go to the events that I have. I can't. Okay, and she knows I haven't done anything much with her and all. And the reason I ask is because they refer to YSL, conversation that you had with the so I was just but because she said that's I assume she's okay. Give a nice smile. And I'm not doing that to be weird or anything. I'm just
It was on occasion.
I switched because my son's.
Yeah.
And I wanted. All those little-
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
nobody can do that. Well, when you turn 18, you're on your own. No more rules, go on. Good luck to you.
Yeah, where you gonna hold it?
Steel's just getting comfortable over there. Steel's getting more comfortable over
I'm dead serious. I'm 100% sure that I'm right about that.
You can take your seats for me, but the jury's gonna come out in a minute. So you might want to stand. Before they come in, let me just say one thing. If you're here for a legitimate purpose, we are glad that you're here. But I do have an obligation to make sure this jury is not distracted, so we don't need to have any conversations that are audible, okay? Let's keep it to a minimum. This is a courtroom. All right, ready for the jury?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, bring them in.
All rise, the jury.
All right, everybody ready to go forward? If you follow my instructions, raise your right hands. Let the record reflect, they've all done that. Call your next witness.
Thank you, Judge. The state calls George E. Barnhill.
George E. Barnhill. Raise your right hand. The evidence you give is sworn or affirmed to be the truth, so help you God.
I so swear.
Thank you. Put your hand down. Introduce yourself to the jury. We already know how to spell your last name, so I don't.
All right, George Barnhill, middle initial E, as opposed to my son, F. I am retired for 2 years as of January the 1st. Trying to think here.
That's good.
All right.
You can ask some more questions.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Everybody here, okay?
Yes, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, sir.
How you doing today?
Good, well.
Good, good. So you've already introduced yourself as George Barnhill, George E. Barnhill, is that right? Do you have other nicknames that kind of help distinguish you from your son, such as Big Barnhill, Little Barnhill, or Junior, Senior, anything like that?
Some people call young George Little George, but he's not that little. I've got another son bigger than me, so it sort of puts us in a quandary. But
All right, that's fair. You said you've been retired for about 2 years.
January the 1st made 2, so what now? 2 years and a month.
Where did you retire from?
The district attorney's office in Waycross.
And when you say Waycross, that's a city in Georgia, is it not?
Yes.
Is it also the name of the judicial
The
circuit?
Waycross Judicial Circuit is 6 counties, 6 county seats.
Okay.
I worked there for right at 39 years, give or take a month.
Now, I'm going to show you what we've already admitted as State's Exhibit 1. Do you see it on the screen next to you, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right. This green portion here, what is this?
That's it. That's the Waycross Circuit.
So down here, you see kind of the piece that extends almost down into Florida?
The toe. It's also called the Georgia Bend.
Okay. And what county is that?
Charlton.
Go a little west, what county is that?
Ware.
County is this one kind of?
That's Brantley,
County?
Pierce,
This county?
Bacon,
And this county?
and Coffee. With the breakfast circuit.
You're bacon and coffee next to each other?
Yes, sir. What?
You're bacon and coffee next to each other?
Yes.
So, all right, so where is your county, or where is kind of the main office for the Waycross Judicial Circuit?
Our main office is in Waycross, but we've kept a satellite office in Douglas that normally has 2 attorneys, 1 investigator, and 2 secretaries now for 15, 16 years.
Okay. Now, where is Waycross on this map?
Waycross is actually kind of up near the county line with Pierce, about where the tip of your pin, a little bit down, correct? We're about 60 miles inland from Brunswick on Corridor Z, the US Highway 82.
Now, what about where Douglas is?
Douglas, Douglas is just sort of in the center of Coffee County, back over here in Douglas, Coffee. It's in the middle of Coffee County.
Is Coffee here?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you as the district attorney, did you have an office that you kind of made your main office that you would drive into every day?
Waycross, that's our main office.
How many people did you employ?
By the time I retired, I had, positions or people, because you always have vacancies. I think when you get to about 12, you plan on having 1 vacancy. But I had about 24 vacancies, about 24 positions on any given day. I might have 24 people working, might have 22. And we had secretaries, attorneys, run about 10 attorneys and about 14 staff.
When you talk about attorneys, are those assistant district attorneys?
Correct. All of them.
They're prosecutors.
Yes.
Right. And when did you become the district attorney?
10 years ago.
When you became okay.
Yes. So I've been retired too. I did 2 4-year terms.
Right. Prior to
I did have about 3 months as district attorney in the interim. The DA prior to me had resigned, retired. He'd gotten 34 years under the old retirement system.
And so for those 3 months, is that what we call the acting district attorney? Okay. And before you were the acting district attorney, before you were the district attorney and the acting district attorney, what did you do for a living?
I was chief assistant for right at 20 years.
Right. And chief assistant is effectively the second in command?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's the elected officials in command. So you're as we used to say, you get handed all the stuff the DA doesn't want to do and the younger attorneys can't do.
Okay, fair enough. And do you supervise all the younger attorneys as the chief assistant?
I did.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, with the DA, we're a small office, but it's split up. And I had worked, the DA he had been the chief assistant for my first about 11 years. I had a county year and then I had 10 years with the state. So, I'd worked with him since the day I started, and then he got to be DA, Rick Curry, and then I became his chief assistant.
Prior to being the chief assistant, were you a prosecutor before that?
Yes, for about 11 years before that.
And does that kind of take up your whole career?
No, that's it. I had 6 months in a real estate law firm, and I never looked back. I went back to that. I worked as a DA for 3 years. I got out 6 months in a real estate firm doing deeds and foreclosures. Happily came back to the DA's office and stayed there until I retired.
Throughout your career, whether you were an assistant district attorney, chief assistant, acting DA, or the district attorney, the elected district attorney, how many cases do you think that you handled?
Thousands.
Okay.
I prided myself. The 20 years I was chief assistant, I kept the highest caseload in the office.
Okay. You said you prided yourself on that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I handled a lot of cases. And then, people, if you've worked in prosecution offices, a lot of people come in and do it a brief time and don't like it and move on. Some stay and they move to a bigger office, more benefits, more salary. But I always kept a pretty good caseload.
Okay. What kind of cases were you prosecuting?
In the smaller counties, we do everything from, I used to say misdemeanors, but we actually prosecuted some things out of the education code that hardly even scores a misdemeanor, all the way up to murders and death penalty murders.
Okay. And did you kind of handle the wide gamut yourself?
As I got older, it was toward the top end. Okay. But over the course of my time, yeah, I've handled. I used to talk about. I had a week in Barnhill one time. I tried 2 upbraiding school bus driver, which is not even really listed as a misdemeanor. It's just a fine and told not to do it again. And had 2 trials for that. Then also had a trial for a pretty serious child molestation case.
And how many? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No. You were about to say something.
You need to cut me off. I'll talk a lot. But I've tried. I think I've tried just about everything in the code book.
So, how many murders do you think that you've handled?
And again, we used to try cases in teams. So different officers do it different ways, probably as part of the team that tried a murder case, usually a 2-person team. I would say 350 or so or better.
Okay. When you say a 2-person team, is that kind of what we refer to as trial partners?
Yeah. You split the case up. One do the opening, one do the closing, split the witnesses up.
Okay. And is it fair to say that you just kind of see which witnesses you have, who's busy with certain things, other things, and one person takes one witness, sometimes split down the middle, sometimes one person takes a little more, all that?
Sure. Yes. And then sometimes, I've tried cases on my own. I mean, some of them I've done by myself.
Among those murders, how many do you think that you have handled that there was some sort of claim of self-defense or justification?
A fair number. very rarely does a murder occur that there's not some claim. It's very rarely do murders, is it a mystery murderer? 90% or better of the murders are among people that know each other, usually family members.
And so the whodunits are not that common.
Correct.
Right. Now, what was your position in February of 2020?
DA, district attorney.
And at that time, was your son employed?
My son worked down here in Brunswick.
When you say down here in Brunswick?
Yeah, for the DA's office.
And was he the guy you saw outside earlier that had come in the courtroom before you?
Correct.
Okay. And generally, did you have a good relationship with your son?
Yeah, I hope so.
Now, at that time, how long before that time do you think that you knew Jackie Johnson?
My earliest memory of Jackie, I know she was a judge's law clerk, and she may have interned. I knew her dad, and I knew that she had gone to law school. I knew it was her dad, Zach Johnson, over from Alma, and Alma's a little town, just a bunch of people. For years, we had the circuit kind of divided. We had Coffee, we had Ware, and we had the 4 small counties. I worked 4 small counties a good bit of my career until the latter half of my time as chief assistant. I did more in Ware and Coffee. So probably, and then as DA, I was all over the place. So early on, I did the 4 small counties.
Now, after, and I think you indicated when you had first met Jackie, did she become a prosecutor after that?
I think she was a law clerk in Maycross.
Okay.
And because I know we talked to her about working at our office, and she turned us down and came to work down here. And, just knew that she was an assistant DA. I think she worked for Steve Kelly.
At the time that she was an assistant district attorney, did you talk to her at all, or was it just somebody that you had met previously and went to work somewhere else?
Not really. As an assistant, I might bump into her like in a conference, but I don't really remember having any contact. I don't remember any specific contact while she was an assistant.
Like at winter conference or summer conference or something?
Yeah, you see a bunch of people and I think I've seen you at those.
You have. So what about after she became DA?
When she became DA, I was still chief assistant.
Okay.
So again, other than seeing her at the conference and congratulating her on being DA, I didn't really have any contact with her. Now our circuits would share cases back and forth. But somehow over the years, I had never been assigned any of those cases. I'd ridden over here, I think, once or twice with Alex Markowitz, but they were not my cases. It was his case. And, I just went, for the ride.
Sure. So it's not a day in the office. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's about it.
So now we talked about winter conference and summer conference when most prosecutors go to get their CLEs and also to see some old friends maybe from another office. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. Are there separate meetings for district attorneys alone?
Quarterly DA meetings.
Okay. Now, what are those meetings? Not what are they like, but who is there?
For most of my career, there were 49 districts. There's now 50 because they split the Augusta district, I think.
Did you know there's 51 now?
No, I'm retired. So they have a quarterly meeting. And they're actually good meetings because if you go to them, you feel better that other people are facing the same problems. We used to joke somewhat that we would go up there and listen to the problems out of Atlanta, and like the Pope, when we returned to our rural circuits, would kiss the ground like the Pope does when he returns to the Vatican, because our problems seem so small compared to what their problems were. And most of that's caseload and funding, number of courtrooms, just people not in the business of what we do don't understand there becomes a limit to how much you can just push through the facilities. So anyway, I would go to probably 3 a year of those quarterly meetings.
And you say quarterly, so I guess that means there's 4.
Mm-hmm. One's always at the summer conference.
Okay. One's always, and is there one at the winter conference too? Or
No, for some reason they're always set differently than the winter. And we would normally go to either Athens or to that place up in the mountains, Brasstown Ball Resort, which is, if you've been to it, there's no good way to get there, which is why I guess they got a cheap rate. PAC was always looking for a discount place for us to meet.
It's not terrible. There's a limit on the funding, is there?
Correct, and sometimes we would go to Macon, Athens. I went to Gainesville once. I mean, there's just so many scenic sights you can see in some of these places.
And in those sorts of places, do you need to get to know the other districts?
Yes, you do, and that's one of the best parts of it.
Do you sort of also discuss your cases sometimes?
Sure.
And do you kind of get to know each district attorney, they're kind of individually and who they are?
I wouldn't say you get to know them closely, but you know, if you go to enough of them, there's a group that goes to about every one. And then there's some that never go. They never, ever go. I don't know what, they could come in here. I doubt I'd know who they were. A lot of them you get to know, but you know, it's a friendly group of people. Because again, we all face generally the same issues, trying to get and keep employees. Funding's always a big issue. And the most important, retirement. And that's, believe it or not. And see, that was always, it didn't concern me because I wasn't going to be drawing the elected official retirement. I was on the state retirement.
You're on ERS.
Yes.
So did Jackie go to these meetings when you were district?
Yeah, she would be at them and I would see her and talk to her.
Okay. Talk about cases, those sorts of things, challenges?
Yeah, but again, most of what we talked about was trying to get and keep employees.
It's tough, isn't it?
It's very hard with and you know, you've been around it. They can make more money out in the private sector. And for a lot of them, it's just about that. You can offer them a benefit package or a retirement plan, but that's 30 years away. And most of them aren't looking that far.
Do you sort of know as the district attorney what your surrounding jurisdictions are like?
A little bit, and pretty much because I've got people, a lot of the employees, like say for Tifton, over the years we've had people come back and forth from Tifton. I was always pretty generous. If somebody left and they'd done a good job, if they wanted to come back, I was always happy to get them back. And then I felt like some of that worked the other way. I'd have people would leave and then come work for us and be with us for a couple of years, and they would go back.
And as you spend time kind of in your job, doing your job, would you say you work with law enforcement often?
Oh yeah, every day. If you're the DA, every night, day and night, they got your number.
And not just that, but you sort of, once you're in the prosecution arena, you sort of get to understand sort of the reputation of various law enforcement agencies, other prosecutors, those sorts of things.
A little bit, somewhat.
And would you say that some are tough on crime and some maybe are not tough on crime?
Well, the group that's down here, basically south of the fall line, I think are all uniformly tough on crime. Some a little tougher than others. We don't have any real progressive DAs in the southern part of the state. That's usually up Athens, Atlanta, Columbus, Augusta, Macon. And again, I say that even they're tough on serious crime, but they're looking for alternatives. I think it's an economy of scale too. They're faced with so many cases. But if you can find a quote unquote program to put early, first and second offense drug cases into,
I'm sorry.
but they're going to try to do that.
When you retired 2 years ago, tell me about your relationship with Jackie Johnson. How good was it? Was it not good? Did you have a close relationship? Did you not talk to her at all? What was your relationship?
to be honest, I hadn't really seen or talked to Jackie until today. I've seen her in person for years. She lost her election to Keith. Now, I'd known Keith for over 30 years. Keith was a young assistant DA about the time I was. When I first started, I think Glenn Thomas was the DA over here, and I worked for Donnie Dixon, and the two of them were very close friends. And when we would go to the summer winter conference, we would do stuff together.
How was your relationship? And I'm sorry, I don't mean.
Mine with Jackie?
Yeah.
Good. I mean, I knew her. She was always friendly to me, and I was friendly to her.
When you become the DA, do you sort of look to other DAs for help, for advice on what to do?
Mine was more younger DAs calling me, asking me what I would do.
And did Jackie ever call you for advice?
On occasion, she would call me and ask me something going on, but that was common. We had a young DA in Tifton. We had 2 or 3 young DAs in a row through the Lapahall circuit, which is Homerville, Nashville, Adel.
Were you always willing to give advice?
Sure.
Were you always willing to give an opinion?
Yeah, that's pretty much who I am, I guess.
So I was about to ask you.
I used to tell me I got paid to talk. I wanted the taxpayers to get their money's worth.
That's fair enough. So let me take you to February of 2020, around the time of the shooting of Ahmaud Arbery. Do you have a decent memory of that time?
I hope so. I mean, I'm pretty sure I do.
Okay. I want to start with the day of the shooting. Do you recall the Sunday of the day of the shooting?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. What's the first thing you remember from that Sunday?
I was at my parents' farm, which is in Brantley County.
And again, just so we all understand, which one is Brantley County?
Well, I can't point to it, but it's Brantley is the one that kind of juts out. That's Charlton. You go up one. That's where, right there.
This one.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, my son George called and wanted me to call Jackie.
About what time is this?
And it was late afternoon. My memory was it was still light out, but it was late. I was outside. I can remember that. And, you know, there's always something to piddle with. But we were either mowing or doing something. But, and I've tried to remember. I can't remember. It seems like my wife or somebody hollered at me that George was on the phone because I didn't have my phone on me. I talked to him and he said that Jackie was trying to find me to call Jackie.
So,
and I think that I called her on my cell phone.
Kind of finish up what you were doing, or did you run inside, grab your phone, and what, you know?
No, I didn't really hurry. I mean, I think he might have been calling on my phone, and somebody told me and given me the phone or hollered at me to come get the phone. So anyway, and I called her. I mean, you know, see what was up.
Did you pick up?
Yeah.
What time do you think that this call happened, ish?
It would have been late afternoon. My memory is the sun was still out, but it was late on the horizon type thing.
One of those times where you wouldn't start around the golf range.
No, well, I don't play golf, but it was late in the day. I mean, it was. I just vaguely remember the sun was still out, and I don't know why I remember that, but it was late, like late on the horizon.
Tell me about the conversation.
There's always some niceties, and she was asking, would I take this case?
When you say this case?
Well, that case, the McMichael Arbery case. And, but I don't remember her really giving me a lot of facts. It was the son of her previous investigator, Greg McMichael. I had met him. He was an acquaintance, but I didn't know him.
Who was the son of her previous?
That he had been involved in and my memory of what it was, that it was a burglary, and there had been a shooting at or immediately after the burglary. So there was a confrontation and a struggle over a gun, and a guy had been shot.
Let me kind of break down a little bit that. Who did you understand was the shooter?
the son of her ex-employee, and I don't know if she may have told me a name, but it didn't register with me at the time. I don't think she told me who the victim was either. It's just just a shooting. And that she didn't want to handle it because it was her ex-employee.
So, what did you say back?
I told her we could handle it, the office, we would handle it. It seems like, and I may have asked her why she was getting off or something, because DAs differ. Older DAs tend to stay on and keep stuff that is not a bar rule conflict. And that I guess our generation came along when that was just part of the job. And I can't remember if I've told you or told the GBI, it's that difference between older and newer, like the generation somewhat. That if that's just part of the job, I've prosecuted people that I've sat next to in church, prosecuted their children. I've prosecuted people that were, close friends. Some are not friends to this day because of that. But it's like, this is what we signed up for. You knew this going into it. This was going to happen. I saw this happen with prior DAs. I knew that's what I had signed on when I became the DA. So anyway, I don't know if we talked about that so much as why she was getting off, but she wanted off because this McMichael guy had worked for her as an investigator, but had resigned or retired or left, and this was his son, and she thought it would look inappropriate if she handled it.
Now, let me ask you, you said if you would, I don't know, correct me if I say this the wrong way, that you would take the case or handle the case.
Mm-hmm.
What did that mean to you?
Well, it meant we were going to be assigned the case. We would handle the case.
And what does that mean to you?
Well, that we would take over and be sworn in to come over here and handle the case.
As what?
I guess you're the acting district attorney. You're not the DA, but they've conflicted off. It goes back to bar rules, and that when you're off, they get somebody else to handle it.
Okay. And I'm not trying to. And I want to really kind of distill down on this. What is your role as the prosecutor in your mind when you are handling?
Well, it's yours. It's just like you're going to handle it all the way from the first day through the last appeal.
Okay. So, what was her specific request to you for the first thing that you do?
Well, she wanted me to go meet with the Glenn County PD the next day.
Okay.
And I told her I doubt I was going to be able to go the next day.
Okay.
Because we were picking juries in Mayhutta. And
Picking juries where?
Mayhutta, Brantley County.
All right.
Brantley County. And that was a standard trial week. And again, circuits differ, but we have pre-trial days and you really wither it down. And we were down to like 3 cases that were supposed to go to trial, and we had figured we were going to pick 2 juries.
Now,
and
let me stop you real quick, and we'll come right back to this.
Sure.
You talk about picking juries.
Mm-hmm.
What sometimes they can go on forever, sometimes it can be short. What was the time frame that you were thinking it was going to take you to pick juries that day?
Normally, you start court at 9, but you don't really start at 9. Everybody gets there at 9. You really start about 9:15, 9:30. But on a jury selection day, we had 4 Superior Court judges in our circuit. It depends on the judge. If it was Judge Blunt, the bailiffs would sit. They had a list of the first 40 that was going to be jury panel number 1. We would get to picking juries pretty quick. The other judges, we would go through the calendar. We would then might talk about it. We might take a break. They really want to see, are we going to pick a jury or not? So,
really going to pick a jury or not? What's kind of the alternate?
We'll take a plea.
See if you can resolve the case.
Resolve the case with some sort of plea and disposition. So, Judge Blunt always wanted to pick juries and then see if they wanted to plea after they picked a jury. We were reluctant because we might get what we thought was a bad jury and encourage somebody to go to trial. But anyway, because we never would have enough jurors there show up. So anyway, but if you're asking the timeline, I knew if we were going to pick two, we were going to run into a late lunch. If the judge, you just can't get in there and get the 40 seated, get them out of usually the first floor of the courthouse to come up and sit, because they have to call the roll. They have to, we were going to be on into finishing two juries 1 o'clock. And then it would be, normally if we picked two and that's all we were going to get, then we would eat lunch in there about 1:30 or 2 o'clock. Just time-wise, what it takes, to move people around. And I don't know, Glenn may do it different, but Brantley sees a little small courthouse. They only have just one courtroom. There's not a jury room to put people in. They're just down there on the first floor around.
When you say finish two juries by a late lunch?
It's going to take 2 hours at least per jury. By the time you question them, both sides get to question them. If you need to pull different individuals in for specific voir dire, or if you're going to do that in the back, resetting up, it's all those things that every circuit's a little different. But that circuit, a couple of hours, that's if everything goes pretty well.
And I think what I was going to ask is, finish a jury. Does that mean you got 12 plus alternate seats?
Yes. And then they're told to come back Tuesday morning or Wednesday morning, and then usually they take a break and you start the next one. So my thought on 2 juries was, if we picked 2 juries, that was going to put us between 1 and 2 if everything went well. Then if we grabbed a bite to eat, but then the problem is, if you've got a jury coming in tomorrow, you don't want to be in a situation to drive into Brunswick. And I think that's what I was telling Jackie. I mean, it may be Wednesday before I get down there.
Possibly Thursday?
Possibly Thursday.
Because what other things do you need to do other than pick a jury?
Well, you got to make sure witnesses are there, that they're coming, that we found them, check service. I mean, usually do that right before you pick the jury. But then there's always witnesses to try to talk to before trial. I mean, it's all that stuff. Got to do jury charges.
Is there a lot to do?
Yeah.
Is it busy?
It's a flurry of busy work every time.
And not just that, but are there always kind of things that are changing along the way?
Yes.
Things that get in your way, things you got to fix, all that?
The defense lawyers, judges, sheriffs, it's all in there.
And is that what's keeping you busy?
That's what a DA does.
So you say Wednesday or Thursday, I can't.
Well, I mean, if we pick 2 juries, and if I'm going to have to sit with Michelle during the first one, she was a trial lawyer, trial assistant office. If I'm going to need to sit with her, I mean, I'm probably going to be tied up. I mean, I could get down there late one evening, 6 o'clock or something, but it really more like Wednesday-ish.
So what was Jackie's reaction?
She said, well, I need you down there tomorrow, if at all possible. And I kind of left it open. I'll see. But I cannot make a promise. Because if we pick 2 juries in the morning, the rest of that afternoon is going to be spent rounding up stray witnesses and making sure people are there, talking if there's crime lab, all that stuff.
What was the need for getting you there on Monday?
They wanted to see me Monday, I guess. I mean, it wasn't really said to me why it was so urgent. I made some assumptions. But
What assumptions did you make?
Well, when we got here on Monday, then what happened, the 2 juries, they pled. So we were done. And so we were able to come on down here that morning.
The juries didn't take a plea.
The defendant took a plea. I'm sorry. I had assumed that this son of the investigator was in jail.
Why does that assumption factor into your calculus in terms of why you need to be here on Monday?
In Georgia, well, I mean, I don't know. In Georgia, you have what's called the 48-hour rule, where you can hold somebody up to 48 hours before you make a charging decision. And you're not supposed to, that's a right. And so, it's the time period before they appear, they have to be brought back before a magistrate and either released or charged.
You say magistrate, who's a magistrate?
Magistrate judge.
Okay, keep going.
So, I don't know why, but I just had assumed that. I don't really read anybody telling me that, but the urgency to get down here, I assume that the son, the Greg McMichael's son, was in custody.
Or maybe somebody was.
Or somebody was in custody, whoever.
Can you think of another reason why you might need to be here for an urgent purpose?
I mean, I just assumed he was in custody.
So did you have any more conversation? Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, with murder cases, there is no statute of limitation on murder cases. So there is urgency if you've got people out there, I mean, you're trying to work a case, but you don't have the urgency to put them in jail. There are murder cases where people get arrested years later, months later, after the investigation. So if they're not in custody, normally it's like, let's keep the investigation going and see what we've got. See what we find out that's new, and it may make its own decision.
So after you said, I can't, after Jackie told you, I need you tomorrow, do you remember what you said? I think you said, what back?
Well, I mean, I would try, but it's probably going to be, I'm just telling you, these are cases that already, I mean, we just assumed they were picking juries because they'd already been through a couple of plea dates and said they wanted a jury trial. So I assumed we were going to pick 2 juries.
So did you talk to anybody else that night about it? Or
Michelle McIntyre. Okay. And I told Michelle that it's Brantley, she was the head. I had a young beginning lawyer kind of bouncing around as her helper. But, sometimes somebody's young, they're more work than they're worth. You have to answer all their questions and do the work. So anyway, I told her that, that I was going to probably, she planned on going with me. She immediately, I called her that night, Sunday night, and said, listen, this has come up. We may need to go after we pick these 2 juries tomorrow. And she's like, of course, she was very unhappy with that idea because she said, listen, if I'm picking 2 juries, I'm going to get ready for my trials. I'm like, well, we'll talk. I mean, we'll see.
Juries, the defendants took the plea.
The 2 defendants pled the next morning, much to our surprise.
So after that happens, what do you do?
I had driven separately. I told Michelle, said, come on, ride with me. Let's just go to Brunswick and see what this is about. And we called, I think I called Jackie's phone number and told her, listen, this is pled. We're gonna run on down there and see what's up, talk to these people.
So where did you go?
So she either called or texted back, said, fine, just go to the Glen PD office. And to be honest, it took me, remember, they had moved. But anyway, I knew where it was. I went to the old one first and then remembered they had moved. So anyway.
May I interrupt you real quick? In one of these phone calls, did Jackie indicate to you if and when she was going to conflict the case to the Attorney General?
Monday morning.
Okay. What did she tell you?
Well, my understanding, and I think we discussed it, and I think I told her, so you need to call the AG's office tomorrow morning. She said she would.
And when you say tomorrow morning?
Monday morning. This was the conversation on Sunday. I don't think we talked about that on Monday. Monday was just real quick, like we're in the car and we're heading to Brunswick. And then I can't remember, she either called or texted back and said, they said, go on, just go to GPD. They're waiting on you.
And that kind of bounced around a little bit. And I just want to clarify. So when you had the conversation about when she was going to conflict the case, what day did you have that conversation?
Sunday. That was the Sunday evening, right about dark, close to dark.
You say she was going to conflict with the AG's officer.
Like Monday morning, call them and tell them that she, and that was, again, something kind of common at the time. Some DAs would call around and try to find somebody to take the case. Some, I guess, would just throw it on the AG, like, for them to try to find somebody.
So you make it to the Glen County Police Department. What time did you get
Around 11-ish.
there? Is that Monday morning?
That is Monday morning, correct?
So you walk in the front doors, Michelle with you?
Me and Michelle
You go into a lobby.
go into the lobby.
All right. What happens in the lobby?
We spoke to a young girl behind the window and said, they're waiting on us. We've called ahead. And she's like, okay, well, and then she disappeared out some door, and or she's behind the window. And we waited and waited and waited some more. We looked at all the pictures. We read everything on the wall. There were some pictures of Brunswick. Michelle, she's not from around here. She's from Tennessee. I pointed some stuff out in the pictures because I'd gone to college down here way before, about 1974, 75, 76, 2 years. And we waited a little bit longer. I can remember we were looking out the window. And finally, somebody came and said, come on with us.
How long do you think you waited?
I didn't look at my watch. You know, it probably wasn't any more than 15 minutes, but it seemed longer than that. It's kind of like waiting in the dentist office. I mean, it seems longer than it really is, but
Where did you go?
there's no magazines in the lobby.
Where did you go?
I kind of went down what I thought was kind of some narrow and little dark hallways. It's an enormous building. And I'd only been there a couple of times. I've been to that building one time before, but you know how if you're not driving, you don't pay that much attention to the directions. But anyhow, down and around, and we went to a meeting room, like a conference room, had a big table in the center, big TV on the end of the table, and then like a whiteboard down here at the end. And
how many people were in? And people gather, I assume.
Yeah, and there was, when we first got into that conference room, there was probably about 6 officers. There was like 3 that kind of stayed there the whole time, and then others were coming and going. You know, so there would be times when there would be 6 of them in there. There'd be times when there was 4. I wasn't really paying attention. I sat on as you walked into the room, it's a conference table kind of running away from you, and the door's over in the corner. And I went about halfway down the table and sat down. Michelle sat to my left. I think Tom Jump sat to my right. The TV was down here on my right. Then there was a dark-haired fellow down here on the other side of Michelle. And there was a gal I didn't know, had a bunch of tattoos, blonde-headed.
Other than you and Michelle, was everybody else a police officer?
Yeah, they're all police, yeah.
So it did appear that everybody in the room knew why this meeting was happening.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So what did you all start talking about?
Well, I wonder what happened, and they began to explain to us what had happened the day before. About 18, we got down there, 18 hours later, something like that.
What was your understanding of what happened?
What they told us was there was a burglary in process, and that the homeowner had some cameras up, and they were getting those tapes, and that the individual on those tapes had been identified in that house a week earlier and had been run out of that house by the McMichaels. And I guess they lived next door. And they told us that neighborhood had been having a bunch of entering autos, and that the guy they had run out of that house fit the general description of the entering auto guy, or one of the entering auto guys. But they couldn't make a positive ID on that. It's just a general description.
May or may not be the person.
May or may not be the entering auto people. And if it's like around Waycross, that's very hit or miss on those. But anyway, but they had seen him, that they recognized him immediately as being the same guy that they had run out of that house about a week earlier. 6, 7 nights earlier or evenings earlier. And that the McMichaels, there was some sort of consternation about there was a car seat in the truck. And so the son was driving and the dad was standing in the back, and there was this slow speed chase where they're hollering at him that they've called 911 to stop.
What truck?
I guess it was one of the McMichaels trucks, and I don't know, sitting here right now, I don't know, it was a truck that belonged to the McMichael family, I don't know who. And that they had made some 911 calls, and that somewhere along the way, and at this point in time, it wasn't real clear, but that third fellow, Roddy, has seen this little procession go by, and he jumps in and begins to follow. And somehow or another, and I'm not real clear how, but the McMichaels get ahead, and Roddy's behind, and Arbery's in the middle. And I don't remember when they told us any of these other names, but it just sort of, it's verbally telling us. I don't think at that point in time they typed anything up.
So basically, not been giving you names, but you understand who is who for who's.
Supposedly they're telling him to stop, and they've called the police. And that he gets in the middle, and then he runs back toward Roddy's truck. And one of the officers told us that it was like he was trying to carjack Roddy. And I was kind of like, okay, what? I don't know why they would claim that, but they did. Then he turns around and he runs back, and that's when that guy Roddy starts filming through the windshield.
So at this point, you're hearing some facts.
Mm-hmm.
What is your role here in this meeting?
Just to listen.
Are you just a listener and then you leave, or are they looking for something?
You have to take a little bit bigger step back. Our system of justice, you get a warrant. Law enforcement takes a warrant when they have probable cause. If they feel they have probable cause, they go take a warrant. See the magistrate get a warrant. If they don't feel comfortable taking that warrant and they want to talk to the DA, that means they've got some reservation. And they want to explain that reservation to you. So that kind of, and it happens occasionally, not often. It's pretty rare for law enforcement to call us up. And it's usually on a charge of which charge to take. Is this better as a forgery, or is it better as a theft by deception, or something, that type of question. But when they had not charged anybody. Well, first off, when we got in the room early on, and I'm not sure what the first thing out of my mouth, but I can remember asking them, were the McMichaels locked up? And they told us no, but they'd sent them home.
Why did you ask that, and what was your reaction to
that? And again, it was just that assumption I'd made that the reason for the speed to get down here is because I assumed somebody was in jail and they had 48 hours to charge or release. Otherwise, why not come Thursday or Friday after you've typed your report? Like when you actually gone and gotten all the stuff you have to go get.
Like, go get what?
Witness statements, Ring doorbell cameras.
Do you kind of feel like the meeting was a little bit premature?
Well, it was early, and usually if it's that early, it's something serious. And the seriousness of it being they hadn't arrested anybody. But at that time, that was not what, so we learned that as we got there.
So you're kind of getting these facts verbally from different investigators. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and at times there would be more than one person talking. I mean, if think of it kind of like at Thanksgiving, around the table, people, and there's other ones in the room yakking, and some of them they'd leave, and then there was a tall brunette gal, female officer. She brought the shotgun in and was going to unwrap it. They'd already wrapped it up, and they had a photograph or two of it. I said, you don't need to unwrap it. Just show us the picture of it. It was a Remington 870, which is a very common gun.
At some point, did you learn that there's a video of shooting?
They had it, and they said they were going to show it to us.
Did they?
They did. They showed it the first time, kind of regular speed, and then I know and I can't remember. Then they showed it to us a couple of times in super slow mo on a giant screen, really blown up. If you've seen the video, you know it's really taken at a distance. So it was blown up, and then it was like frame by frame, click, 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 you know, moving forward.
Was that helpful for you?
Well, they were explaining at the time, I think, why they had not arrested, because and it seems like it was the gal across the table and the gal on the other side of Michelle, and I can't swear to who their names are. I think I know who they are. I think it was Lowry and Oliver. But Mr. Jump didn't really say much the whole time.
So you're watching the video. First time you're full speed and just judges, I'm obviously going to have him on direct for a while. At some point, or has a lunch break, just cut me off.
I have been informed that lunch is here for the jurors. We'll go till 12 and then take a lunch break.
Understood, sir. Thank you. And so you see the video for the first time full speed.
Yeah, kind of like just played it and then played it close up. And I know on that first day we were in there was a big debate about was there 2 or 3 shots. And apparently there was some people they had talked to said there was only 2 shots. And I know one time we played it and tried to turn the sound up, and it sounded to me, and to, I guess the other people, it sounded like 3 shots. But then you had, I'm trying to think that there was the dad had said there was, and I think the dad said that he thought there was just 2 shots. And that, for some reason, that was important. And that kind of rolls back into the Gregory Michael. Because if it's 2 shots, they showed us some photographs of the deceased laying on the ground. And apparently they'd had a sheet where he died, and they had a sheet on him. And basically just he's just laying there and they took the pictures. And there was some debate. One shot was to the hand, what we call a cookie cutter. I think it was on the right hand. And then the other shot was in the body, and it was like if there was only 2 shots, then you've got to have an entrance and an exit. And there was sort of some debate because there was an entrance wound, and then there was a wound up here in the shoulder. It was like, and I can remember saying, well, that'd be really peculiar to hold the shotgun at such an odd angle down here like this to go. Anyway.
Now, you say the term cookie cutter shot.
Contact wound, yeah.
When you're doing this, obviously someone is deceased, right?
Correct.
And you're using kind of these scientific terms, this terminology. Why do you use such cut and dry terms when someone is deceased? And it's just recently.
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I guess if you've gone to enough murder scenes and you've been to enough cases, I mean, you try to describe it between yourselves what it is. And, the contact wound to the hand, the further away you get, the bullet expands, especially with a shotgun.
I'm sorry, I'm going to object to this point. I don't believe that this testimony is relevant.
Well,
let's move on.
So you're having this conversation. Where does this conversation lead you to about the video?
And again, by conversation, it was mostly us listening and hearing what they were showing us. What their description to us was how that, and I didn't really ask a lot of questions. We were just listening. I don't think Michelle was asking, but she was talking to Lowry, and I'm not sure exactly what all they talked about. This was, they're trying to give us a presentation of what they've got. And then they're putting in, they're giving us their evaluation of what they've got, showing us, and, I can tell you what their basic foundation of their contention was. That I know that the gal across the table with all the tattoos was saying how that the McMichael fella only backed up, and that when she was showing the video that the Arbery guy was hitting him in the head with one hand and holding the shotgun with the other one as they kind of backed up and went off out of camera. And then they kind of came back and went back off. And so really, all three shots were not visible on the frames. And the pattern of shots they had derived was the first one was to the hand. And then the second one, the way they told us that day, their opinion was the second one was kind of an in and out through the body. And then the third one just sort of went into the air. Now that was later contradicted when we got the autopsy report somewhat.
What is being asked of you in this meeting?
I don't really remember a whole lot being, when you say ask, this was not one of those where we got in there and they're asking us, they didn't ask us for any warrants, they didn't ask us for search warrant help, they didn't ask us for, it was to watch this, and this is why we think it was a self-defense.
And so, what's your purpose for being there?
I don't know. I mean, I mean,
and I don't mean disrespect when I say this. It's not just to put up to entertain you or anything.
No.
Obviously, you have a reason for being there. What's your reason for being there?
I guess to tell them that they were doing okay. They basically briefed us on what they had. They didn't really ask us a lot of questions. And like I said, we watched that tape a couple of times. I know we turned the volume up once. We watched it super slow-mo up front. We discussed the shots and what we saw in the video. And from again, I couldn't really hear Lowry because he's down here, but Michelle, what she shared with me, what he was saying, I do know what the woman across there was saying, was that they had evaluated this as a self-defense. My thought, to be honest, just like right now, and other people in this room are wondering what they're going to eat for lunch. They're wondering, what do we hear next? We're wondering, what do they want me to decide? I was kind of doing the same thing. To be honest, I was thinking I could have come down here Thursday and heard this.
Did arrest warrants come up?
I don't really remember it coming up about arrest warrants. They had made a decision not to arrest the night before. I mean, we became aware of that.
Go ahead.
I mean, they had made that decision. Now, who or how or why? I mean, who was involved in that? Or how? I don't have any idea. But that was what was presented to us. They had sent them both home. And my response to them was, well, y'all are going to need to write a report. You're going to need to put all of this in writing. And you're going to need to go out and get all this stuff done. You're going to need to go get those Ring doorbells. You're going to need to go ask for this other stuff. And you're going to need to make a full report, just like you would any other murder case, and get that to us. And it's going to go to a grand jury.
And when you say that you're going to do all of this, it's going to go to the grand jury.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean it's going to go to the grand jury?
Well, if I had stayed on the case, and you know what happened, COVID intervened and we suspended all court 2 weeks, about two and a half weeks later, all court was suspended. We couldn't put two people in a room together. But it would have been a full report and we would have taken it probably with a criminal indictment with several variety of charges, and we would have hashed it out.
I'm about to move on to something else. I know it's 4 minutes to 12. Right now might be a really good time.
All right, let's take a break for lunch. Don't discuss the case among yourselves or listen in and discussion of it. Let's try to get it done in about 45 minutes, okay? All right, the jury.
But you'll need to rise or you should stay seated.
All right. Jury has access. We'll shoot for a quarter till, okay?
Sir?
We'll shoot for a quarter till.
Yes, sir.
All right. Yes.
Court is still going on in the other courtroom. When you go to the rotunda, please keep your noise down so you don't disrupt the other courtroom. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you for watching the infamous Sylvia channel, where laughter and fun make up our panel. Together we build this digital spree. We appreciate you and our growing family. With mods by our side and chat flowing free in this online space. It's just you and me, we laugh until tears roll down like the rain. In this virtual world, you ease all my pains. We're a family, not just a show. Every click and comment makes us grow. Mods and chat, keeping the vibe so right. Together we shine like stars in the night. We cherish the moments, the highs and lows, from the latest gossip to stories untold. You're more than a viewer, you're part of the crew in this space of ours. It's all because of you. This digital world where emotion is shared, every post and reaction showing we care. The love is real in this virtual domain. With every sign, enjoys what we'll gain. We're a family, not just a show. Every click and comment makes us grow. Mods and chat, keeping the vibe so right. Together we shine like stars in the night. We're a family, not just a show. Every click and comment makes us grow. Mods and chat, keeping the vibe so right. Together we shine like stars in the night. This digital world where emotion is shared, every post and reaction showing we care. The love is real in this virtual domain. With every sign, enjoys what we'll gain. We're a family, not just a show. Every click and comment